You're listening to Leadership Powered by Common Sense with your host, Doug Thorpe. Here's Doug.
Hello again, everyone. This is Doug Thorpe, and you're listening to another episode of Leadership Powered by Common Sense. Today, we're going to continue a journey in the world of culture at your business and building the right kind of culture and doing some other things with leadership around that idea. My guest is a gentleman named Steve Rice. I'm going to let him explain a concept that I've never heard before, but I think it's an interesting one that you'll enjoy knowing about. His name is Steve Rice. Steve, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Doug. It's an honor to be here. I appreciate the invite.
Yeah, as is a little bit of a custom here, Steve, tell us some of your background and how you got into the realm of leadership theory that you're part of now.
Boy, well, I think, I don't know, every place that I've ever worked, from spaghetti factory to, a movie theater to an outdoor store to grocery store, I was put in leadership positions fairly quickly. I think I was bussing tables at Red Robin for 2 months before they made me the head busboy. And same with Spaghetti Factory. I was there for a month before they made me a training waiter, and I've had a lot of, leadership positions. I don't have an MBA. I have the dubious distinction, I like to say, of being a studio art major who ended up with a sociology degree from a pre-med university, which is all true. And, I think I sort of came by it naturally, to be honest. And, maybe it's genetic. I say that because, my brother has been a hired gun CEO in Asia for the last 40 years and is tremendous at it. He was the head of Diageo and Tyson and Dannon. But I chose a lot of lifestyle. I made a lot of lifestyle decisions. Used to be a fishing guide in Alaska, which requires, leadership and safety skills. Ended up being a rock climbing and mountaineering instructor. And when I was in the outdoor industry, the world of Patagonia, outdoor research, North Face, and I just found myself in a place where my technological savvy sort of mixed with my artistic sense to understand systems and technology and how they're related to culture. And I learned pretty mid 90s, late 90s, when I was in my 20s, that good systems make everybody look good except the people who maybe aren't so good, and bad systems make everybody look bad. And there are a lot of technology choices, among other things, that leaders make or choose not to make that actually lead to poor cultures. And I started getting hired for the technology savvy and the technical architecture knowledge that I had, my ability to sort of see across systems inside a company, across their ERP, supply chain, how it's connected to, production and efficiency, and how that gets out the door, and the internet, and how that's, connecting the internet, the web back to the ERP, and basically stakeholder awareness instead of shareholder awareness. And that led me to understand a lot more about culture and start thinking about that and start looking for more than just technology solutions to culture, which there are those. And I ran across Stephen Sloan, who is the founder of Humane Leadership Institute. He wrote a book called Humane Leadership. I highly recommend everybody read it. He's the one who taught me about MOCA, which is motivation, opportunity, clarity, and ability. We'll talk about that a little more later. And then I got fascinated by the idea of non-arguable goals, which is going to lead us to the zero unmeasured externalities that you mentioned. And a non-arguable goal is a sort of centralizing motivational rule for an organization. And I first came across it because I was reading about Paul O'Neill. And Paul O'Neill was the Secretary of the Treasury, I think, under two different administrations. I forget what position he had, but I know that he was the CEO for Alcoa. And he took over Alcoa at a time when, it was still the largest aluminum manufacturer in the world, but it was also underperforming everything. They couldn't even get their prospectuses to the FTC on time. And he showed up at his very first shareholder meeting and they said, "Yay, Paul O'Neill, what are you going to do to make this awesome again?" And he said, "We're going to focus on one thing. We're going to have a non-arguable goal." And everyone's thinking, money, money, money. And he says, "We're going to focus on worker safety, and that is going to drive excellence across our company." And quite literally, people walked out the back door and sold stock because they thought, who's this jackwagon? What he recognized is that, there's going to be a lot of things I'm going to say, like how you do anything is how you do everything. How you treat anyone is how you treat everyone. These are things other people have said that are smarter than me. And he recognized that in an organization, if you're not treating your employees well, you're going to have a lot of other problems. And you can measure that. It's a culture problem. If somebody's worried that they're going to lose an arm, they're going to call in sick, and that's an efficiency issue. They're not going to work as hard, or they're going to avoid the danger area where they're going to lose the arm, and that's an efficiency problem. And so he basically said, look, you can measure the quality of the workplace that we are building and growing for our employees by the number of worker days lost to illness or injury. And he told everybody, like, that's what our non-arguable goal is. We know we can never attain it. There's no such thing as 0 worker days, right? But that's what makes it non-arguable. If anybody wants to lose a hand, I think he actually said this at the meeting, if you want to lose an arm in one of our aluminum factories, raise it right now, because you'll be the first one. So that's what makes it non-arguable, that concept. It also tends to be unattainable. So he basically said, that's our non-arguable goal. From now on, this organization has an unlimited budget for worker safety issues, and you don't have to ask for us for it. Like, you don't have to go up the food chain to put a railing or a cage around a dangerous machine. And I'm going to give everybody my phone number. So if you're an employee at a factory anywhere in the world and there's something dangerous, I want you to bring it to the attention of your boss and their boss. And if they don't do anything about it, you call me. So, and he's stuck to his guns. Somebody in Mexico got injured. I think they actually lost a limb, and he fired the manager and the CEO of that organization. Like, what if that was you? What if that was your granddaughter? So that's the basis of 0 unmeasured externalities. And it only took me 4 minutes to get there. One of my challenges, Doug, is I use 10 words where one would do, because I'm a storyteller. But 0 unmeasured externalities is a concept that we use at the Globally Conscious Leader, which is one of the organizations that I developed with my buddy John Lamy. And we're distinctly focused on culture and how that affects ethical, business practices and morality sense. And an externality is something. It was actually an invented term in the late 1800s that was made famous in the 1920s by a economist, and it's defined as an unknown or unexpected consequence that someone else is having that they weren't expecting because of your actions. A good example is we had PCBs. I don't even know what we use them for in industry, but we decided, hey, let's just throw them in the river when we're done. And we had an unintended consequence that we almost wiped out the raptor population, at least in the United States and Canada, So that's an externality. And we all know what they are. We maybe haven't used the term before, but we know that if you run a factory and you have excess chemicals sitting in drums and you just dump them into the ground, you're going to have an alluvial fan of toxic waste that's going to hurt somebody. And so we try not to do that. So the concept of 0 unmeasured externalities isn't some pie in the sky thing, like we're going to eliminate every bad thing we do and it's going to be really expensive and it's going to drive us into the ground and we're not going to be in business anymore. But it is a concept that says we're going to pay attention and start asking ourselves, what aren't we thinking about? What don't we know? And we're going to engage our partners around the globe in that question. And we're all going to get better together. And so does that make sense, Doug, with that
Oh,
long,
yeah.
winding explanation?
Yeah, and I want to go back to the cultural aspect of the non-negotiable. I like that idea,
Yep.
and um, I don't recall. I know the turnaround at Alcoa has been documented, and maybe is now a case study at university. I don't know, but
I believe it is.
do you recall the magnitude and the time frame for that change to start showing up?
Oh, it was fairly quick. I think it was the late 80s, if I remember right, that he took over Alcoa, and within a few years they had turned around. There were a couple other things that he did around constant improvement and constraint theory, which I mentioned before we started talking here. But to put constraint theory, that's like looking at like what are our problems. One of them is the biggest problem that we have. That's basically the essence of constraint theory. Let's tackle that, and everybody's going to tackle that one problem. And he looked at his accounting department, which, this is a major multinational corporation, and there's really smart people in that room, smartest people in the world, right, are in those finance departments. And they were one of those organizations that kept putting in their what do you call it? Like they were delaying when they had to put in their reports to the FTC. And he sat like 11 people down in a room and he said, look, if you did nothing else, if we got rid of everything else you thought you had to do and said, we need you to do this report for us every year, how much time would it take you? And they went back and thought about it. And I forget what time frame they came back with, but it was less than 2 weeks. And he said, okay, we're going to do that right now. And their response was, wait, what? We didn't mean that. We didn't know you were going to make it. And he's like, no, you don't understand. Like you're the smartest people in the company. I need you to get this done because we need you for the other 353 days a year doing other things that are good for the company. And they're like, okay. And so they did. And they started doing their reports on time.
Yeah.
That approach can have massive effects across the entire organization. And they did. I don't have the numbers for you, but I'm glad you asked because now I'm going to go look those up and have them ready next time. But yeah, I mean, they became a well-respected organization fairly quickly within a few years, and their stock price went through the roof. Yeah.
Well, it is amazing what the right kind of leadership can do for an organization, and often the ones that get, I guess, memorialized over time are those kind of turnarounds. Lee Iacocca famously turned around Chrysler back in the day, and but in later years, I know a lot of people took knocks at Iacocca, and I don't even remember all the details. But
yeah,
the point being, I think cultural leadership can change things. And you said something in your early statement, how we do one thing is how we may do everything. And I think that is the essence of culture. And on a prior show, we talked about that when we do start talking about culture at a company, some people glaze over. It feels too woo-woo and a little too mystical. But it boils down to how are you going to do what you do? And
yep.
I don't mean that to your point from a pure technological standpoint or a pure product standpoint, but it's the practice of what you do and how you do it. I have talked about, I met a business owner, he's a general contractor over in Florida, and has a legacy business. He's second generation owner of this business, but when he took it over from his dad, he grew it like 4x in just a pretty short time. But I was talking with him and I said, so what's your value statement with this company? What do you tell your people? And he said, oh, ours is simple. Our non-negotiable is we do the right thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, okay, that's interesting. I'm intrigued, but if I may for a moment play devil's advocate, that's kind of cheesy. What does that really mean? How do you prove that? And he said, oh, it's simple. he said, think about construction. What does everybody know about what goes on in construction? You got a big project. You make a goof in one little area, it's going to cost you money to fix it. You fix it, but you plow that charge into some other element of the project so that you get made whole for your mistake. You made the mistake. Now you're going to somehow figure out a way to plow that back into the numbers so that you get made whole. He said,
Yep.
guess what? We don't do that. He said, and we show our customers our bills when we fix something that we did wrong the first time.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, you know what that does for us? What that's created, people know we bid high. We are not the cheapest bid that you're going to get on a project. We're not the highest, but we're not the cheapest. But people like us because they think we're as honest as the day is long, and they're going to get a straight story from us. They're going to get the right thing done. We are going to be proactive about fixing what we might otherwise have messed up. And stuff does happen, you can't deny that. And they live by hiring subcontractors, and those subs don't always do the right thing. So as GC, you got to go fix what a sub might have done wrong. And that's the way he operates. And
Nice.
and it's delegated to his project managers, his team leaders out in the field. They don't even call him when they know they need to go fix something.
Yeah.
They've
That's
got
fantastic.
the latitude and the budget to go do it. And the company is wildly successful, wildly profitable, and it all comes out, at the end of the day.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of really good examples across many, many industries of organizations like that. And, as consumers, we might pay more for that. You pay more for a Patagonia jacket than you do for something from Walmart. And, like a friend of mine said the other day, like he actually had like a 25-year-old Patagonia jacket that delaminated, and they gave him a brand new one. And he laughed. He said, with Patagonia, you cry once. With everybody else, you cry every 3 years, and that kind of attitude towards manufacturing and service, I think, is important, and it's what we want to encourage. And it's why everybody on your podcast comes here to talk about organizational and cultural excellence. It's what you want, and because let's be honest, you can make a lot of money being an a-hole.
Yeah.
There's a local company here, one of those family things, third generation family run business. And, the current CEO has managed to quadruple sales in the 10-year-ish time as CEO, but he's got a room in that company that the employees refer to as the yelling room. And that doesn't sound like a fun place to work to me. Not that it's all bad. Like there's no such thing. Well, I'm not going to say necessarily no such thing, but most businesses they're not all bad, But if I had one of my driving forces for me is that I've worked for people who were horrible bosses and horrible owners. Most owners that I worked for as an employee were the worst employee in their entire company. They were the most likely to say no to a customer or yell at a customer. And then there were all these great customer service people like me who were, human centered, didn't know what that term was back then, who would make things right and do the right thing. So I'd like to see, first, I'd like to acknowledge that I think there are leaders at every level in every organization around the world, from the janitor all the way to the owner and the CEO. And despite the fact that there's been a plethora of professionals who call themselves change managers, I think that every single person in a company, if you think about it, they're actually a change manager. Your job is not to keep things the same. It's to make things better. Whether you're the designer or the design team manager or the director of sales, and if you're not helping make things better, you're probably better off getting a job at Taco Bell. And you might end up having to do that if that's how you run your life. And in a certain way, I don't mean to demean Taco Bell. I actually worked there when I was a kid. But there are people who just like going to work and doing a good job and going home. And I know plenty of people in manufacturing who just work in shipping, and they've been there since they were a kid, and they have been offered jobs to be the shipping manager, and or they're in the manufacturing, and they're going from left to right, putting things together, and then when someone wants to make them a production manager, and like, no, I actually don't want to do that.
Right.
And that's actually a fantastic leadership quality, being able to say no.
It is to be able to, identify those things, and back to what you were saying there, leaders that can embrace that change when that subordinate employee says, I've got an idea, I see something we can do differently.
Yep.
It is sad when the owner or founder says, no, no, we can't do that. That doesn't fit with my idea, And
right.
When in reality, it's probably great. And there's a story I've told before. I had a guest on my show a couple of years ago that told this story. I wish it was mine, but it's not. She had a client, a CEO, founder, had a team of about 25, and the company was growing, making good progress and rocking along. And one day, one of the kind of team leaders came in and said, "Hey, boss, we're crushing all our numbers. Can we just take the afternoon off as a team, all of us? Let's go down the street to the coffee bar and have a beverage and enjoy some time." And he said, "That's a great idea." And so, he walks out. "All right, shut it down. We're gonna go take a break." So they go to this coffee bar, and I don't know what he had in his mind was getting ready to happen, but they got their beverages. The same team leader said, "Well, now that we're here, we have a list we'd like to talk to you about."
Fantastic.
And they had collectively come together, and I wouldn't necessarily call them grievances, but they compiled this list, and they said, "We need to present you with some ideas for change that we need. And number one on the list is you. You micromanage us, and we don't need that. We know what the vision is. We know what the values are. We're ready to do it. We don't need you hovering over us." And he kind of sat back and went, "Okay, what's next? Tell me more." And so they went through the whole list, and he basically said, "Give me 24 hours to process this. I'll get back to you and let you know what I want to do." He wasn't put off by it, and he came back the next day, and he had a very proactive, very positive reaction to everything on the list, and said, "Let's go. That's, I get all of those things. You've got my blessing. You're right. Spot on. Let's do it." Well, the company basically doubled in the next year.
Yeah.
And
it's amazing how 100 people are smarter than one person.
Yeah. Yeah.
How does that math work?
Yeah. So it can be done, and what I'd like to do with the time we do have here, let's talk about the MOCA a minute. Say again, what is the acronym? What does it mean?
I'm so happy you asked it, because I've been thinking about it. This all connected. MOCA stands for motivation, opportunity, clarity, and ability. And I'm a bear of very little brain, I say. And like, for me to remember this, I ended up putting it on Post-it notes, and I had it posted on every computer in every business at every workstation for like 4 years, because I just kept being like, what is that? I need it. I need to access it now. And it's a set of words that came out of sometime in the 70s with some, highly technical psychological approaches to efficiency in the workplace. And they were first talking about, I think, OMA. They didn't have the clarity. And but Stephen Sloan, as I mentioned before, from the Globally Conscious Leader, he added the clarity to it, and he used it as a performance. He called it a performance jig. And for him, he was thinking, I'm tired as a leader. He ran like one of the largest non-box store office supply chains in Southern California, and was the president of whatever the national association of those people are. And he's like, wait a second, like, why is it that I'm constantly responsible for other people being accountable? I realize I'm a leader, but I need people to lead themselves, And I like he told me once, like, you have to lead yourself out of bed every morning first. You have to have a reason to get up. And so he added the clarity piece, and he just started thinking about it, like, what is it that any one person or organization needs, and they need those. No more, no less, in a certain way. So MOCA, I use it as a verb, and I think if everyone started using it, we would completely eliminate the dreaded annual review, because you can have many, many types of conversations that include MOCA, and I'll give you some examples, because I've sat in a meeting with the C-suite executives, of a 10-figure company, actually 11, and they're talking about what the strategy for the next 2 years, and sometimes you're sitting there listening, and I'm kind of like, okay, how motivated is this company to do this? You're talking about doubling your sales in the next 2 years, and are you going to give yourself the opportunity? And someone said, well, why do you ask that question that way? And I said, well, you have a director of sales over there who has a full-time job, and it sounds to me like you just gave that person a second job. And I'm wondering, if you're going to give that person that job, what responsibilities are you going to take away from that person? And I asked that, it was a woman. I said, how do you feel about that? And she's like, I was sitting here scared shitless. You can bleep that one out, because I don't know how I'm going to get all that done, because you just gave me 2 jobs. And I said, this is where the MOCA comes in. If you're going to be clear, if you're going to have clarity about what you want somebody to do, and they know how to do it, the ability part, and they're motivated, if you don't give them the opportunity as a leader to actually do it, and they don't raise their hand and say, in order for me to have the proper opportunity, I need, say, 2 hours a day, it's not going to get done. Right? Or it's going to be done poorly. Any one of those things is missing, it's going to be done poorly. And so I've used MOCA for almost everything. I had 2 employees who came into my office one day, within 15 minutes of each other, and they said, each almost identical, I can't work with this person anymore. They're always changing this and doing that and not asking us for permission to do X, Y, and Z. And when they each came into my office, I did that same thing that owner did. But I said, will you give me till the end of the day, or at least past lunch? I need to think about this. And the first one, I didn't know that the second one was going to come in. And when the second one came in, I just kind of smiled to myself. And after lunch, I went over to them and I said, like, here's $40. I'm going to ask you to, first, I want you to know that you're both indispensable to this company. And you both need to be here. I don't want you to leave. I don't want you to quit. I don't want to fire you. And I'm like, but you're both amazing human beings. And I don't really know, I have no insight into why some people don't get along. I know that that's true, and that's okay. At the same time, I think you guys should be friends. So here's $40. I want you to go across the street to the pub, get a beer and some wings or fries, and I want you to MOCA each other. And their eyes got really big, and they're like, what? Like, we've been using MOCA for 2 years. You know what we're talking about? You have a relationship. I want you guys to just use that as a framework to have a conversation. And they came back about an hour and 15 minutes later, and they're like, we got it all worked out. We're good, boss. I was like, thank you. And that was 6 years ago, and those people are friends to this day. Now, that's a small example, but that MOCA piece is a very powerful way to own accountability. Like, if I'm an employee, people are good people. We want agency. We want responsibility. Even if we don't want to be promoted, we want to have our sphere of influence and be really good at it. And I think MOCA is a great way to do that. And whether you are an employee, a middle manager, or an owner or an executive, you can pull MOCA out at any time. It turns every single moment into a teachable moment, and it's also reciprocal. So I would add an R to the MOCA from Humane Leadership's version, because if you're talking about motivation, that goes both ways. Opportunity has to be provided and taken and utilized, and clarity has to be provided and understood. And even ability you might not have the ability to do something, but you might have the motivation, opportunity, and clarity that you want to do it. And I've had employees do that to me where we're doing MOCA instead of our annual review. And I'm like, where do you see yourself in a couple of years? Because you can also MOCA in the future. And they're like, I want to be a project manager. Oh, that's fantastic. So how do I give you the opportunity? I gave that person 4 hours a week every Friday from 9 to 1 to take classes that I paid for on agile project management. That was an investment on my part. And the only reason I knew about it is because MOCA, and gave that person the ability to reciprocate the ask back to me for what they wanted.
That reminds me, I was telling a story with someone yesterday. It was a flashback to my early days in banking. I was operating mainly in the operations, sort of the back room of the bank, and I had a team and I was doing some things and, getting some notoriety for what I was creating and doing operationally. Mm-hmm. And one day, one of the senior executives walked into my office. He was head of our real estate portfolio. At the time, we were a regional bank, but our real estate was about $5 billion in asset value. And he said, I've been given permission to come talk to you. I need you to come. I want to build an operations group in my department, which was kind of rare and different. But they told me I could talk to you and see if you're interested. And I said, yeah, I'm interested. But I got to tell you, Steve, I don't know a thing about real estate transactions, papering them, all the legal ramifications. And we're talking high-end commercial stuff. And he said, I'll fix that. And he picked up the phone and he called our lead attorney at our bank next door. And he said, I found my guy. He's going to run my admin group. We've been talking about this. He said, I want him to come to your office for however long it takes for you to give him a primer in real estate law.
Nice.
And over it was about a 6-month journey. I went over once a week and I sat in this guy's office literally for a couple of hours. And I shadowed him and we got to ask questions and we got to negotiate. And I essentially did a cram course in law school for 6 months. And I have, over the decades, when I've had opportunity to be involved in those kind of transactions, I've had opposing attorneys ask me where I went to law school.
Wow.
And I'm not one, for the record, I'm not an attorney. I don't practice law, but I'm willing to talk shop with you anytime, any day, And but it was that kind of opportunity and ability thing that came together with my new boss, who said, I'm motivated to hire you. Are you motivated to join me? And I said, yes, we check that box. I've got opportunity. Are you interested? Yes. But, I know I've got an ability gap that's going to impact it. How can we fix that? And he immediately sent me to law school.
That's so fantastic, Doug.
So, yeah, I'm a personal beneficiary of that kind of opportunity. So, if I'm a small business owner and I want to boost my culture, how do I start implementing MOCA with my team?
First, I'm going to say, this is difficult, but it's not hard. As leaders or owners, I know I was afraid all the time. Like, am I going to make the wrong move? Am I going to? But the funny thing about MOCA is you just need to start talking about it. And I had what I was basically learning it. I was talking to Stephen Sloan and I said, how do we do this? He's like, I'm just going to show up at your business with, the 6 or 7, leaders that you think are in your organization. And we're going to talk about what MOCA is and how to use it. And you're just going to ask them to practice it. And they're going to probably have to put a Post-it or on the Sharpie on their hand for it. But it becomes second nature after a while, and it doesn't take very long. And it's what's nice about it too is you can set up situations where you practice MOCA. The way I like to tell people is first, MOCA yourself. And we're talking when I'm talking about MOCA, I'm usually talking about what's my status now? How am I assessing myself now in this, whatever it is I'm MOCA-ing, and what do I want that to be? Because, identification of something is one thing, but saying how you want it to be different is a very powerful tool, personally, professionally, organizationally. So MOCA yourself. You can MOCA your personal motivations for getting out of bed. You can MOCA why you even want to go to work. And you can say, how do I want that to be different in 5 years? Because the answer might be like, I want to go work somewhere else. And that's good. Like if a business wants people to work there who want to work there. And if you don't really want to work there, then go get another job. So you MOCA yourself. You could practice with your spouse, MOCA-ing each other. And I would say the next thing is I would find my friends, my close friends who are not coworkers, and I would talk to them about it. And I basically become the teacher and say, like, I have this thing called MOCA. Will you MOCA me and I can MOCA you? And let's talk about our business stuff. Because when you sit down to lunch with your buddy that you've known for 20 years, you're pretty much talking about your life state and you're MOCA-ing without thinking about it. But if you actually do it, it's very powerful. And you have somebody that you trust that you can do that with. Once you do those things and you get familiar with it, I would say then you go inside your company and you look at your best friend in that company, a peer that you have a very trusting relationship with, and you MOCA each other there. Because once you get inside the company, if you're an employee, you're automatically training everybody around you when you do it to them. And I say do it, I shouldn't say do it to them, you do it with them. Because someone can say, like, let's do this thing. Well, I'm not actually very motivated to do that because I have another job and I don't have the opportunity to succeed at doing this thing you want me to do because I'm working over here, And when you start doing that, people's heads pop up like prairie dogs, And in fact, there was a company where I was doing that with the entire marketing team. And after like 6-8 weeks, they were over there talking about stuff and the words motivation kept coming up and clarity. And I'm not clear about this. What is it? What is it you want me to do? Well, let me repeat that back to you. And literally the sales team was in another pod and their heads started popping up. The marketing director told me about this. He said, yeah, their heads popped up. They're like, what are you guys doing over there? Oh, let me tell you about this. And yeah, so MOCA became a part of that organization's communication strategy without the CEO even saying, this is actually something we want to do. And certainly they weren't complaining. It wasn't like we went through the back door and did something bad.
That's great.
But that's why I say that there's leaders at every level, because you don't have to be, and maybe shouldn't even be the CEO to get this done. But if you are the CEO and you can say, this is something I want to start trying to do, the risk is very low. The other thing I like about MOCA is there's a lot of other things out there that change managers talk about, culture developers talk about, that can be hijacked by people and sort of used poorly.
Right.
A quick example is like the idea of like, what's it called? Radical truth, radical honesty. Well, I've seen organizations that bring in consultants who talk about, don't lie to me, tell me the truth. And you have people inside that company going like, I think you're total bleep. And, and it's like, we're not here for that. We didn't, radical honesty or a good culture doesn't include an abusive honesty like that.
Right.
And MOCA is really hard to abuse.
Other example I can think of along that line, God love my friends who administer the DISC personality assessments.
Right on, I know.
I have seen that happen 100% of the time. Companies will hire and they'll do a massive wave of training. And without exception, the coaches and administrators that are doing it will say, don't use this as a tool, a weapon. Use it as an understanding so you can empathize and relate to your colleagues, but that's not what happens. people inevitably they get their little dots on their door, that red, yellow, blue, and green, and then people start going, ooh, I can't talk to you, you're blue or you're green, or
Yeah.
and it just makes me gag every time I run into a company that's done that, because again, 100% of the time it's weaponized, and it's not used the way it's intended to be.
I
So,
agree, Doug.
and I'll get mail on that, but that's okay. But
Like I've
Steve,
done the disc training, and I know what that looks like. And it's, uh, like I said, people are mostly good, but the systems we get put in affect how we act.
Yep,
And it can be totally weaponized.
yep, I agree.
And just
Steve,
saying
on
don't
that,
weaponize it.
we're gonna need to wrap this up. We're about
Let's
up
do
on
it.
time. This has been great. It's been a pleasure having you on here. Tell folks the best way to get a hold of you if they'd like to know more about your work.
Well, go to the globallyconsciousleader.com, and we have free classes there. Every class on the Globally Conscious Leader is free and will always be free. Because we want you to succeed. We want to teach you what we know. We have a bunch of educators on there, as well as mentors who will show up in our coaching sessions, which aren't free, but they're relatively inexpensive. Roughly $300 a month or so. And I say that, like, if you're a 60,000 a year middle manager or employee and you want to be a middle manager, getting coaching for $300 a month that allows you to become the manager or the director of that, that could be a $30,000 a year raise.
Yeah.
So I think it's a very reasonable price stuff. Go there. I'm going to invent a discount code, Thorpe724 right now. I'll put it in the system for 50% off for a couple months. What's this, August 1st? Let's say September 30th. And that's basically the way that you can get in touch with the organization, have access to people who work for major corporations. They'll pop in and be your mentors. And my email address is steve@thegloballyconsciousleader.com, which somebody might have surmised already. Reach out.
Very
Find
good.
me on LinkedIn.
Very good. Well, as
Let's make
always,
the world a better
folks,
place.
we'll have that information in our show notes, all those links and that. And thank you, Steve, for that bonus offering there. We'll certainly circulate that, get it out for everybody.
Thank you,
But
Doug.
with this, we're going to wrap up, sign off. I do like to remind you, if you're listening on your favorite streaming service, we do have a video version of this over on YouTube, channel by the same name. Steve has some really cool guitars in the background, so if you have only been listening, you check out the video. But let me say goodbye. Go out there, make it a great day.
Thank you, Doug. It's been an honor.
You've been listening to Leadership Powered by Common Sense, hosted by Doug Thorpe. If you would like to know more about the coaching and advisory services he provides, visit dougthorpe.com.